Hello, welcome to this week's episode of It's Your Time You're Wasting. Hello, Martin. How are
Hello
you?
there. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm tickety boo.
Tickety boo. And you're David Dido, and
I
I'm
am, and you're Martin
Martin
Robinson.
Robinson. There we are. So
Yet again,
deft as a brush.
deft as a brush. Thanks to Stuart Caldwell, who on Substack described us as being deft as brushes, which we're delighted by, aren't we?
We are. And he was talking about our last podcast, wasn't he? About various things. I can't remember exactly what he said. Can you remember any of it?
I've got it here,
You
Martin.
have. That's thank God for that.
He
Go on.
says he really liked the idea of schools being gymnasia for the body and mind, which was what we were obviously talking about last week, and it's something we've been thinking about a lot, and I probably do think about a lot. What are schools for, and are they as many people seem to assume? Do they exist to get children better jobs and affluence and to help them make their way in a cold, uncaring world? Is it to enculturate them and make them obedient citizens that contribute meaningfully to society? Or is it for something else?
There
We
you
were
go.
talking last week, weren't we, a little bit about the ancient Greeks, and you told me something which I thought was fascinating. That you're blaming Plato.
No, we're not blaming Plato, but you were talking about a civic education, weren't you? You're
Mm.
talking before we came on air, by the way. David was talking about a civic education, for which I said you should blame Plato for that idea. It goes back to the Republic and the building of the citizen, and in the end, the philosopher king, of course. After 5 years of dialectics, something like 8 years of rhetoric, 10 years of mathematics, he sort of bunged all this together with a lot of emphasis on physical and military training as well. So it's not all having fun with
No,
chatting
no.
and arguing and becoming a member of the Senate or anything like that. There were other things going on as well. And part of the PE, of course, I think physical education, you had to wrestle,
Yeah,
wrestling
Greek
in
wrestling.
olive oil, I expect as well.
Well, probably not in olive
In
oil.
olive,
Probably
not in olive oil, but
not
coated,
like in a
coated,
vat.
coated in olive oil, not in a bath in
That would
olive
be
oil.
different. Yeah. No, yeah. So you'd rub yourself down with olive oil and
Yes, don't we all? Don't we all do that?
gleaming.
It's part of my morning routine.
I've heard that.
That's why I had to give up smoking.
Very dangerous.
Very dangerous when you're coated in
Yeah.
olive oil. Yeah.
Mm.
Yes. Sorry, we've gone off on a tangent already, which is hardly surprising. If you, by the way, don't forget to like and subscribe, please, and do all the things on the other pods like following and giving us 5 stars and doing anything
Listening.
else you can. Just
We,
being nice and talking to us, sending us comments like
yeah, we
Mr.
like that.
Caldwell did.
We don't get enough attention.
No, we need it. We need it. So today we're improvising somewhat around the idea of play, creativity, and all the things that perhaps we should be filling our minds with rather than just the mundanity of
Yeah. What did
schooling
we?
as re-envisaged by
What was the
hmm,
title that we came up with at the last moment for this episode?
I
We
can't
quite
remember now.
liked it.
It's gone.
You
It's
can't
gone
remember.
from there. It's
It's
something
something
about
about making minds, isn't it? Making
making
minds.
minds. Yes.
Yeah.
Making
Or rather,
minds, not filling them.
not filling them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if schools are going to be gymnasia for the body and mind, and if we are doing that, why are we doing it? Why do we want to make children more intelligent? Why do we want to make them more physically fit? What's the point? Why don't we just leave leave them kids alone?
Well, as we were talking last week about whether they're actually becoming more intelligent or less intelligent now, I think even there was the podcast you talked about the other week with Alistair Campbell and the Rory Stewart
Oh
talked
yeah,
about this very thing. It's like they
I
were
do
listening
that.
to our podcast. I
Yeah,
can't
probably
imagine.
are.
Yeah, goal hanger.
No way.
Here we come. Uh, if only. But I
Well,
can't. I
they
can't.
might learn a thing or two.
They might. I can't imagine that they were really. But let's pretend they were. And if schools and everyone's becoming less intelligent because of AI, basically, what is school for? And this thing about you're talking about filling minds. Isn't this sounding a bit like the old progressive traditional dichotomy somewhat that
Yeah,
we
the,
filling the pail or lighting the fire? Isn't that what's going on really underneath it all?
yeah, the children of blank slates, tabula rasa, with which we impose our middle class orthodoxies on their fragile sensibilities to try and make them more like us and less like them.
Yes, that's what it's all about, isn't it? I mean,
Well, maybe it is. So I wrote a book a few years ago called "Making Kids Clever," and I argued in that I opened by talking about the purpose of education and discussing various different stances on that, and said that, in my view, the purpose of education should be to make children cleverer, and that everyone can become cleverer no matter their starting point, and that we mentioned this. I think it was last week when we were talking about the components of intelligence, fluid and crystallized intelligence, and that crystallized intelligence is essentially composed of what you know, and the more things you know, in a very practical and real sense, the greater your ability to work on the world and to solve problems within the world based on that knowledge, regardless of the fluid intelligence, which school can't really do much about, and that there are all sorts of highly correlated positive life outcomes with that, and that seems like a relatively good thing. That was the argument that I presented in that book. I've sort of glossed it rather, but I don't know. What do we think? Do
yeah.
we
I
think
mean,
we do something else?
it's a interesting argument. There's the other argument, which is funny enough, the more of the civic education or more of getting involved in the great conversation. I put it forward in Trivium, which
Mm,
was the idea, more Platonic idea, in terms of getting involved in the great conversation, becoming philosopher kids.
yeah,
This
yeah,
idea that people are ready to join in with the culture in which they find themselves and can argue with it or agree with it or
yeah.
degrees thereof and take a full part in it if they wish, either in a positive or less positive sense.
Yeah, and I don't think those things are at odds at all. I think obviously the more crystallized intelligence you have, the greater your knowledge of the world, the better able you are to take part in that ongoing um, conversation, and the better the more interesting a role that you're perhaps able to play in the society you find yourself. But I think one of the things that's been on my mind over the last week or so is really thinking about the fact that education, certainly if we look at the stuff that we're teaching, is sometimes accused or thought of as being elitist, as that we're we're we've got kids who perhaps aspire to becoming working in beauty salons or being plumbers or TikTok influencers or whatever it is they want to do, and we're making them study algebra and read Shakespeare. And why are we doing it? What's the point of giving them that stuff if they're not interested in it and they don't see it as having any practical purpose?
Mm. It's this is the market trader problem. I had a kid I had to teach who's on his 17th birthday. His dad bought him a Ferrari, and
Right,
his dad was a market trader
right,
I think Walthamstow Market. Just selling tat.
right.
But obviously had a lot of money. It's a lot of
He was
money in tat.
a bellboy.
And another one whose dad ran a carpet fitting company that he was going to go into. So
Mm.
just these kids who were going to go into the family business and all that. There was a lot of
Yeah.
money to be made doing this sort of thing. Why am I here in this school at this moment having to go through this where I don't need my GCSEs, I don't need these the currency of the exams, and this whole school, certainly in key stage 4 and key stage 5, this was key stage 4,
Yeah.
is based around that currency, and they'd lost interest in that currency. They didn't need it. Now, whether
Yeah. So
posh
the
schools
argument,
don't get this, why is it it wasn't in the posh schools? They sort of still love that sort of thing. They still want their GCSEs, even though they might be going into daddy's firm.
I think maybe status,
Mm.
maybe the ability to say that you've got a suite of exams, that you've been to Oxbridge, that you're part of not just the nice but dim Sloane Ranger Brigade, but you're part of an intellectual elite. Maybe
Yeah,
that's the attraction. Um,
competitiveness.
yeah, definitely competitiveness. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much part of it. But one of the other things, to throw into this is that we also talked briefly last week about the going back to the Greeks, talking about the concept of education for leisure, and the education being to make your mind and body better, more interesting, more capable, and in the broadest sense. And the in perhaps slightly in opposition to Plato's view, I think I'm much more attracted to Epicurus's take on education, the mastermind behind ethical hedonism, and the concept of ataraxia. Do you come across ataraxia, Martin? Do you know about
I
that?
can see it's on the screen in your glasses. I can see that you've got it in front of you.
Fantastic, yeah.
Do tell me what it says.
It's peace of mind or tranquility.
Uh-huh.
Kind of nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the idea of eudaimonia, of
Mm.
flourishing, of being able to live the pleasurable life, is it's greater. It's a higher pursuit than acquiring wealth or being part of civic duties. It's about personal freedom and peace of mind, and particularly key, the removal of fear.
Mm. Now, eudaimonia is, I think, key to a lot of things. It's often translated nowadays as happiness,
Right.
which in our sense can become seemingly a shallow
Yeah, which is why
and
ethical
immediate thing.
hedonism is better than that, isn't it? It's happiness plus purpose.
Mm. But
The
it's a
the
purposeless universe. What's the point? What's the
Where does that
point in any of
in
it?
well, maybe the purpose is to find purpose, and that we're
The
happier.
meaning is to find meaning. I mean,
Yeah, that we're happier than when we find a reason for being, and we find a purpose, and we find something to dedicate ourselves to, and that is inherently pleasurable. And
okay.
that
So, but
that
that's
mere
doing.
hedonism,
That's doing things. That's
yeah,
actually finding something to be active in. And I think a lot of the accusations about, I'll call it the Gib Gove system that we've ended up with, is that actually that's been taken out of it. That what we've ended up with is a system very much about external things to learn in order to do well in your exams, in order to, for whatever purpose that is, rather than something actively interesting for some, most, all pupils.
yeah. I mean, we've talked before about the inherent problem with our GCSE system at the moment, which is that a significant minority of children are destined to get below what's widely considered the passing grade, and that
It's about a third, isn't it?
it's about a third, and that no, what's in it for them? What's in it for them to get a three?
And also, I mean, there's a certain cynicism for some who are just jumping through the hoops.
Yeah, yeah,
to
and
get
you're
the
saying,
GCSE, to get the A level,
um,
whatever it is, in order to get the job that AI is going to take off them in the short to medium term.
and to get the job, to get the salary, to get the life,
Yeah.
to get all of the good things that are promised, but that promise is maybe inherently dishonest. That the line between um, education and income isn't, it certainly doesn't provide any guarantees, and for those performing at the margins, the idea of telling them that we're doing this stuff because it's in the exam is a bit weak, isn't it?
Right. But that, what's it? Learning can be defined as alteration in long term memory. If nothing is altered in long term memory, nothing has been learned. Taken at its most fundamental level by a school, this is all we do. Isn't that the kind of thing we would expect? Whether it's, I know Ofsted put loads of things around this saying that we don't want it to be just about facts, blah, 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 blah. But at some level, particularly at Key Stage 4, perhaps a bit sooner than that, it does become a bit of a slog sometimes for some kids. Some kids fly through.
Some kids fly through despite the slog,
Mm.
despite the system, because they're lucky, because they've got more advantages. They're either, they've got higher fluid intelligence, they've got slightly greater working memory capacity. They find it easier to remember the stuff, and they've also got social advantages. They've got access to tutors. They've got access to middle class dinner table conversations and parents who might help them with their homework and all of that
And
stuff.
parents,
Well,
you know,
parents, yeah,
parents
yeah,
who are together perhaps as well,
yeah.
families.
Ability, yeah, maybe so. So what's we've talked a lot about the idea that education should be school, should be more than that, and we've also talked a lot about creativity
Mm.
and what that is, and for all the fact that we can find fault with many of the arguments of the late great Sir Ken Robinson, I do really like his definition of creativity, which is original ideas that have worth.
Right. So how much, and let's say this is a general school, how much opportunity have you got to do anything like that? And should you? Should you?
Right. Should you? Well, let's think about the early years of schooling. Let's think about when children first arrive. And the orthodoxy here is that we should allow children to play in structured environments, and that through playing they'll refine their ability to perhaps do things like manipulate objects, fine motor control, social interactions, communication. All of these things will be enhanced through that process of play, and that we often think of play as being inherently a creative process.
Yeah,
What
that
do you
doesn't
think?
go with the Ken Robinson definition, though, does it? You're not producing things that have value when you're playing with plasticine. It
Wow,
might have value to your parent, perhaps, who
it
has
might have
said
value to you as well.
at that precise minute manipulating the thing, and then say, "Oh, look, it's Humpty Dumpty! Hooray!"
And is it the product that has to have value, or can the process be valuable?
Yeah, I mean, it's going back to the problem with the Ken Robinson definition is
Yeah.
it talks about a certain uniqueness of each
Mm.
that has a value of itself to you, but there's also something that's unique about it,
Yeah.
and that's
I
slightly problematic.
It is problematic, and I really like one of the things that the sociologist of education Basil Bernstein used to say, that he wanted education to allow children to think the unthinkable and the not yet thought, which is kind of a lovely turn of phrase. But again, it has that exceptionality, doesn't it? That
Yeah, I mean,
is,
they're not yet thought to you. A bit like you're saying, the uniqueness of the
yeah,
object to you
yeah,
as a child is you know is comes to you surprising, and oh, I've
More
just thought
prosaic,
this.
isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
and
and yeah, and the same with thinking the unthinkable, that you can't think something until you know enough to be able to have the thought.
mm, mm, yeah, yeah.
So we
So
can
are we?
view that in a kind of Ken Robinson
Mm,
way. Is it original? Is it worthwhile? But also we can view it in a more process way where everyone is having these moments and these flashlights going on in their mind at various points. And that's very exciting as a teacher, isn't it? To be party to children having those moments and go, wow, I
mm.
didn't realise that.
No, the moment that the synapses. I mean, this is now who used to do this. They used to, and they come in, and then they touch on it. I think that's a Ken Robinson thing when the
Probably.
synapses come together and go whack, and you get that moment of eureka. You get the eureka moment, or whatever. I don't know if that is always going to cause the eureka moment, but it might just be gravy, please, you know,
Yeah.
or something like that. But yeah,
You know, so
but is play important? Is that what you're saying in
well,
early years?
is play important? Is it creative? I mean, one of the ways, and the other ways we can think about play is that it is essentially mimicry. It's copying often adult behaviour that's witnessed, that children witness and perceive around them, and experimenting with it and seeing. So children will often take on the roles of their parents and other adults in their environment and role play that. You should like that as a drama teacher.
Well, yeah. Mimicry is obviously something drama teachers are adept at, or should be, or teach kids to be adept at. But something going on there about reproducing family structure, copying it. Is this the way the patriarchy reproduces itself? You know, through play.
Yeah, well, in lots of ways, it inevitably is, isn't it? I remember looking. Well, maybe this is a good way in which the patriarchy is being undermined over the years, but I remember looking at my daughter's schoolwork, being invited in when she was I can't remember, but very young in primary school, and looking through her book. And they'd been set this task where they had to write about someone they thought would be a good leader. And she'd written, "My dad would be a good leader, but my mum
What's
won't let him."
oh,
I know.
it's almost Macbeth.
I
It's sort of
know.
Macbeth without much happening.
But obviously, she's internalizing something in the family dynamic there.
Yeah. Have you ever shared that at the dinner table with each other and tried to work out what exactly was going on there?
Well, I think everyone who
Don't worry.
knows me and my wife recognizes that she's in charge.
Quite right. And
Yeah.
as they said in the old days, she wears the trousers, but that you wouldn't be able to say that nowadays.
Well, you just did.
I did, but you wouldn't.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, so in terms of pretending to be, I don't know, the cook, the washer-upper, these sorts of things. That's one element of play, but there's a lot of
Mm.
other things with play. I mean,
Of
play.
course not.
You're also isn't there something? This is also gendered, I think, strangely, and the idea that boys play with more like
Guns.
Meccano, Lego, and things like that. And now, in other words, do we have something about spatial awareness that boys generally have better spatial awareness than girls and women and men? It
On
carries
average.
on through. Is that because of the play or because it's there that
Yeah, yeah.
moves us towards certain playing
I think
because it's
it's
already there?
yeah.
Because
So
this
is
is it
it social
fluid
construct?
or crystallized, in other words?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's a strong argument for saying it's inherent in some way.
Yeah.
One of the things I always noticed is that
David said
when
that, by the way. You know.
well, let me explain. Yeah, one of the things I always notice watching my children play with boys when they're having sort of mixed gender play, and their boy friends, their male friends, when they were very young, would play, would do boy type stuff with my daughter's toys.
Mm,
The dolls would have a fight and or
mm,
do some sort of active process. And when we visited houses where the families had boys, my daughters would take their armies, their soldiers, their cars, and like put them in a classroom setting and sort of take the register and things like this. And the toy that you gave them was kind of irrelevant to what they wanted to do with it.
Yeah. Did you ever give them guns?
No, I
Right.
don't think we did. I think that my wife felt that that was something she didn't want to do.
Okay.
I didn't have strong feelings about it.
I had a Luger, a German Luger.
For yourself
Yeah,
or
as a
your
kid.
or for your
As a kid.
daughter? Did you give your daughter guns?
No, she wasn't a gun person.
You didn't thrust them upon her to find out.
I'm sure she had some of my old toys,
Yeah,
and some of those were soldiers. You know, the old small
yeah,
green
yeah.
ones and things like that. And action men and things like that. She didn't really go for that in a big way.
No.
But yeah, so there are differences. So do you try and move people away from their gendered toys? Like you said that. Oh, he, here she is playing with guns. She must be trans or something like that. And
Well,
we get
yeah,
into all sorts of problems. Let's
we're
not
not.
go there.
Let's not do that. No. No, but there's also the argument that's sort of sometimes presented that when you the greater the social equity that you have in a society, the more likely men and women are to gravitate to more gendered ideas about the jobs they might want to do.
Mm.
That when we've got complete freedom, that men are more likely to want to do jobs where they're interacting with objects rather than people, and women are more likely to prefer people over objects. Of
Okay.
course, that's on average, and not sorry, my door open with the wind.
Oh, I didn't know you had wind. It must be what you had for lunch.
Yeah, thank you. Bless
But
you,
but in terms of playing around with things, you're talking about there, the
yeah.
importance of playing around with things. We do get the impression that this stops as kids get older. Is that right?
Well, I mean, so if you're in a Montessori or Steiner setting, it goes on quite a long time, doesn't it?
Well, should it ever stop?
Should it ever stop? I mean, it stops essentially whether we think it ought or ought not, because eventually there's the idea that we have to buckle down and pass our exams.
Right. So then, and this comes into it because I've got some figures here about GCSEs of the arts, for example, and
Yeah,
since 2010, when the last government came in, there's been an overall decline in the number of arts GCSE entries of 42%.
yeah. We don't know any of that nonsense, do we, Martin?
Well, I mean, the thing about doing anything and technology, the absolute destructiveness, what's happened? I mean, technology as a subject has been destroyed, and it's meant to be one of the top. When we've got a STEM, we're following STEM, and you've taken engineering was not there anyway, and hardly any school did engineering, but you've taken technology basically out of what kids study.
You've just got
S&M.
yeah. Well, okay. S and P, S and M. Yeah, you're right. STEM's a phantom, isn't it? It's a chimera. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah. But this is the doing things. We have stopped doing things at schools and become more academic. Now, I think you have. I mean, I think you wrote about this recently. I think you're arguing that actually that's okay.
Well, I'm arguing that schools, the reason we have schools, if you take the broad historical sweep, is to teach things that children don't acquire through play, don't acquire through mimicry, don't acquire through social interactions within their communities. And the minute or the moment, not the minute, but as soon as you get something culturally specific, which is difficult to pass on and requires study, you get the emergence of schools. So when we've got if we look at when we first get writing back in Mesopotamia, ancient Sumer, 5,000 BC, no, 3000 BC, 5,000 years ago. We also have, if we look at the archaeological record, the first existence of scribe schools, eduba as they were called, where children were sent, mainly boys, but also some girls. We've got cuneiform tablets which
Mm,
depict
hmm.
boys and girls being educated in there, and we've got records of what went on in these scribe schools, and which they're a bit more violent than modern schools, where there was a lot of beating going on for infractions. But essentially, there was homework, there were teachers, and there were students, and there were desks, and there were exercises, and there was a pedagogy of how to teach cuneiform, so
Mm.
that scribes would learn it because it was recognised that they wouldn't just pick it up, and that wherever cultures have developed things that they want to pass on, that are so culturally specific that they require extended training and study, we also have schools.
Right,
So
but these things can be non-academic. They can be technological. You can learn to be a plumber. You can learn, uh, vocational
yeah,
education,
except
certainly, of
except when
lots
you
of different sorts.
you absolutely can, but I would argue that a majority of plumbers learn plumbing through doing plumbing. That they're a plumber's mate. They go along, they kind of watch the plumbing happening, they kind of take part in it, and then they become a plumber. You don't need to present a qualification or an exam to say I'm. You do if you're an electrician, because we don't want people being electrocuted. But
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
arguably,
you do
you
plumbing
could go.
exams. You do plumbing exams.
Oh, okay, sorry, but I don't think like if you. I don't know. I don't know about the regulation of plumbers. So I'm speaking out of turn there. You're obviously more knowledgeable about
The steady drip, drip of knowledge will come to you.
that. But but you could have schools for trades and vocational stuff, but maybe you don't need it. But if you want somebody to learn, algebraic equations, if you want somebody to learn the scientific method, if you want somebody to learn about glaciation and plate tectonics, then we schools are the most effective and efficient historically way of doing that. Maybe in the age of uh, the internet and AI, maybe they won't be for
Yeah,
always.
but okay, let's go back
They
to
are still
the
current.
let's go back to the thing about Shakespeare because you posited this
Yeah,
at the beginning. Whether we should, I love Shakespeare, so but I'm going to take
it's
on a bit
lovely,
of a
isn't
devil's advocate here. Waste our time
it?
reading Shakespeare and things like that. I want to be a doctor. My
Yeah,
parents are doctors. I used to play being a doctor back at you know nursery school, and I was pretending to be them
you had
and all
more.
those
You
things.
had
So I
more
followed it through. Why shouldn't I carry on my biology lessons, my chemistry lessons, all those things, and maths lessons? These things that I'm actually interested in, that are going to help me in my career. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do these things. Why the hell am I reading Shakespeare?
Yeah,
And you say it's good for me. Well, I can look it up on the internet. I can go to the theatre. I'm going to earn thousands as a doctor anyway, so I can spend my leisure time as I wish. And, it's more of a hobby, really, what I read and all that. Yes, I need to be able to talk properly as a doctor to patients, so perhaps I
but
need to
not
do
in
some,
iambic pentameter.
but not in iambic pentameter and blank verse. I don't need all those things necessarily. So why shouldn't I be educated in a way that's going to serve me in the longer term, right from day one? Because the rest of this, I'm starting to get agitated in these classes.
Well, it's a strong argument, isn't it? Because at the moment that children do sit their GCSEs, we go, yeah, okay, then
Hmm,
you win. You can just do that,
hmm.
and you don't have to do any more Shakespeare or any more of the stuff that you think is uninteresting to your career prospects. So it's fairly arbitrary that we have chosen in England, in the UK, to look at 16 as the cutoff that happens. Uh, and so do we so yeah, as the response that I used to give as a teacher to children saying, why are we doing this, what's the point of learning about this. My killer answer that I was very fond of was to say, it makes your mind a more interesting place to spend the rest of your life.
Does it
Uh,
though? Does it though?
yeah, well, I thought that was a great answer. But a lot of the children I taught were distinctly unimpressed. They're like, whatever. Um, so yeah, all right, die down. That's only convincing from sort of a post hoc perspective, if indeed it is at all.
Yeah. And also, if it's been learnt just to get through the exam and then promptly forgotten, or worse still, hated in order to get through that exam and then closed off forever because.
Yeah, I mean that was my experience of some subjects. So I always felt very stupid and very anxious around maths. So I didn't engage with it because it was easier than going through the anxiety and the fear of looking foolish. So I didn't bother, and I failed my maths GCSE when I was at school. And then when I wanted to become a teacher, I had to
Mm,
redo it, and which was very annoying. And I did. I went to night school. I studied maths at night school. It was back in the period where there were maths coursework, and I had to do coursework on probability, and I was almost weeping at it. Sort of like it
mm.
was so hard. Anyway, I did it, and I was sort of thinking, how am I going to get through this? I'm going to have to pay someone to pretend to be me and sit the exam, and
Fraud is your first port of call.
oh yeah, that was it. That was my panic mind. But a friend who worked in the school got me lots and lots of GCSE past papers
Yeah.
for maths, and I just committed to doing one every day in the build-up. And by the time the exam came, I was feeling much more confident. And I remember this feeling of sitting one of the two maths papers that I did, and getting to the end of the paper and thinking, I think I got everything right.
And did you?
There's a really well. I did the intermediate maths tier back in the day when you you had to do that to get a C. The foundation tier only took you up to a D. So I did the intermediate tier, and the highest grade on that you could get was a B. And I got a B.
There you go. You see.
I know I got a B. And so I sort of proved to myself that I could do it, and then promptly forgot absolutely
Well,
everything.
this is the question. Did it? I mean, what was the thing you said? It lives in your mind, gives your
Yeah,
mind somewhere,
yeah.
somewhere to
I know.
be with, or
Oh,
whatever it
definitely.
was. What was the quote? Your
Yeah, it
chill
makes
quote.
your mind a more interesting place to
That's
spend
it.
your life. Yeah.
And has it?
Uh, no,
Did it make you a better English teacher?
I think it gave me an appreciation of children who struggled and felt anxious about English.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that I could make that claim. But did having a B in GCSE maths affect my ability to teach English? No, of course not.
No.
Nonsense.
So it's a hoop jumped through.
It is. I mean, it was a very very clear hoop jump that I jumped through for one specific purpose, and and so my personal story there was a positive one, but it is pointless. That we can say we can deliver sort of lines about things like trigonometry is really important because if engineers and architects didn't know about it, bridges wouldn't stay up.
Mm,
But maybe the vast majority of people are going to be like, so what?
mm,
I don't care. As long as a few people know that stuff,
mm,
it's of no consequence to me. And it's almost impossible as a teacher to make an argument that's true and convincing about why children who are uninterested should be. And we can, through force of personality and by carefully selected curriculum, we can make the lessons that we put on as vivid and interesting as we possibly can, and that makes a difference. But essentially, they're right. There is no enduring purpose. We're giving them. I think the best argument we can make is that we're expanding the choices that they're capable of making. That by knowing this stuff and by maybe scoring acceptably in this exam, you've got more choice,
mm.
and that you don't have to choose one way or t'other, but you can as a result of doing the thing. And I think that's probably the best argument that we can make. But when, as you say, with your 17-year-old Ferrari drivers, why would they choose anything else?
Mm. What's the point? If school was more, I mean, Ken Robinson, you talked about earlier, and he said
Killed creativity.
schools kill creativity. Do you think that's right?
No. So, I mean, certainly not in his terms. So his argument was essentially that you take young children and you give them the alternative use test, and paperclips are the example, that really young children, find 50 plus uses of a paperclip, which puts them in genius level, according to Ken. And then as children get older, when they're sort of 13, 14, they take the test and they can only think of 3 uses for a paperclip. And that's big. I would argue that's because they just know a lot more, and they know like a lot of those 50 ideas that the little kids are having are just stupid. They're not
Mm.
creative. They're just silly, and so they're going through a process of going, no, that's not good. That's not good. So the uses that they're thinking of are better. So it's not
Yeah,
that
but
creativity.
it's look, come on, can we all agree that this is a stupid test? You
Yeah,
know,
it's a really
I mean,
stupid thing.
what about playing
It's absurd.
Sibelius on your violin or something like that, or composing your own violin concerto?
Yeah, obviously playing Sibelius on your violin, to get a grade 8 in violin or any other instrument, you don't have to be at all creative.
Well,
You just
that's why I suddenly moved over, if you
yeah,
notice, rather deftly, because I'm deft as a
no,
brush, to
you're deft as well.
composing a violin concerto,
That is
which
a
is
particularly
which
deft
is
breath.
creative.
Yeah, obviously very creative to compose a concerto or a symphony or anything like that. Very few people end up doing that.
But a lot more kids now, let's say, working
Yeah,
with
they're on
the
their
computers and working out
technology.
songs
Yeah,
and
making
tunes and things like that. It's more open to a lot of people now. It's more democratic, you could say,
yeah,
in that people can do that a lot easier and share it a lot easier as well.
absolutely.
So there's should schools be encouraging this sort of thing within the school, or are schools there as a separate place to learn all the boring stuff that really
I
is
definitely think they should be encouraging it. Yeah, absolutely. My particularly my eldest daughter was music was her first love when she was at school. She used to.
music was my first love.
There we are.
Let it
She'd
be.
she had this guitar bag which turned into a rucksack, and she'd sort of have her guitar on her back on the way into school. And there was a really inspirational music department at the school that she went to, and they provided many opportunities for kids who were interested in music to do fun stuff, and that really enriched her experience of education for sure. And it is sad, and it is limiting to think that schools with less resources and greater pressures find themselves unable or unwilling to cater to that range, that diversity of expression that everybody, I think, there's nobody that would say, oh no, I definitely don't want kids exposed to music or art or the
Mm,
grandeur of human expression. I don't think anyone takes that position.
yeah.
It's more a case of, yeah, but at what cost? And it's
Mm,
the trade offs, isn't it, that we make?
yeah. There's also a lot of, I mean, private schools do tend to support the arts more than state schools, perhaps. I mean, arguably. I mean, some
Yeah.
state schools obviously do a lot with the arts, and
Yeah.
a lot of creativity is going on in those schools,
Yeah.
but not necessarily all. And not, I mean, I think Michaela does one art as a GCSE, and that's photography.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, I know they used to study art. I saw an art
Now
lesson.
they study art because they have to as part of the national curriculum
Yeah.
in years
They don't.
7 to 9. But as a
Right.
GCSE, it's one art GCSE
Yeah.
they offer, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's photography.
Bizarre. Okay. I'll take your word.
So, but they only offer double science as well. So for those who argue for three sciences, there's
They
a
do. They
payoff there.
do. Well, obviously the trade off, that
Trade off. That's the word.
what Michaela can boast is that this year they got 100% of their students to get 5 grade 4s.
Mm,
And obviously, nobody else can make quite the same boast.
mm.
but they achieve remarkably, and
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 is part of that because they're very focused
yeah,
on
no, of
memory, on doing all those things
course.
that perhaps we're saying or suggesting
Yeah,
they
and I
could
remember having a
they could
conversation
water it down by
with
being more creative and more
well,
fun.
they
Or,
were looking at the fact that they, you know, that the Progress 8 schools from Michaela were +3, which is obviously way better than anybody else. And they were saying, you know, yeah, I mean, I guess I'd take +2 and add in more of the arts and more of the, you know, more choice. And the problem is that there aren't really people getting +2. You know, there aren't people who are trading off that successfully, and that schools that do make those trade-offs, they do so at the cost of the most disadvantaged students doing less well, and that's a really difficult scales to balance.
yeah, but and then those children doing less well might be doing very well in the arts or
They
technology
might,
or
yeah, they might, they
become
might,
excellent plumbers
yeah, maybe.
rather than unemployed lawyers,
I
which
think
is
I'd like to see the case being made, and I'd like to see the evidence to support that. But you're right; it's a great big maybe. But I suspect it might not be anything more than that.
it's. I mean, I doubt there's any information. Do we have information about
No.
where kids go 10 years after
Oh
they've left
well,
school? I mean,
we
actual
have,
information for all of them.
yeah. I mean, obviously, records are kept on neat, aren't, you know, sort of like destinations, so that
Yeah,
we can see some way into the future.
but not.
I'm not sure how longitudinal that is. I suspect not very.
Wouldn't that be a fascinating thing to?
Absolutely, it would. Absolutely, yeah. I think that the long term consequences of what we do in any sphere, you know, so tell us something that you can't find out from the immediate results. So, for instance, there's been studies that have looked at the efficacy of hospitals and surgeons,
Mm,
looking at, you know, comparing their immediate sort of recovery rates with their long-term recovery rates, sort of 5, 10 years down the line, and that there is some compelling suggestion that not everyone who recovers quickly in the short term does well in the long term,
mm, mm.
and perhaps vice versa, and but without that data, it's really it's one. Well, even with that data, it's really difficult to take the decision and have that long-term view, which you're not going to get the credit for as an individual because it's so far away.
Yeah,
But also, not having the data means you can't really take the decision in any kind of meaningful way.
yeah. And I
So
suppose
we only,
it would be difficult to say what exactly caused all these things in 30 years' time, because
yeah,
a
of
lot
course,
of change is happening in someone's
of course
life, and schools are
you-
very small places. You know, there's only
yeah.
1,000 people go to this school. You know, so you're going to.
Yeah, so you can only look at epidemiological studies and look at correlations,
Mm.
and you know that if you've got big enough samples, you can produce correlations which are strongly suggestive of of
But
relationships.
but with education, we don't know what it is that's actually we're measuring. Is it the GCSE
Yeah,
results, or is
no,
it
but
the teaching they
conceivably,
had? Is it the area they came from? Is it the types
wow.
of family,
No, but
etc.?
you can isolate and sort of you can do factor analysis of some of those variables.
Mm,
Can't you? You can take out social advantage possibly as a factor and look at GCSE outcomes and long term outcomes and look at
mm.
the extent to which they've made a difference to someone's
Yeah, but
life.
you can't say they did photography, so therefore did better than they would have done had they not done photography.
Well, uh, with a big enough sample size, you can say that. You can say that there's some evidence to suggest that doing photography makes, you know, enhances life outcomes. It wouldn't ever be causally robust,
No.
but you can find a strong enough correlation to suggest that doing
What's the best
just
GCSE
something,
to take? Yeah,
yeah,
for a happy
maybe.
life, for
Well,
eudaimonia, for eudaimonia.
pneumonia because of that. And again, what makes it? What do you think makes a happy life? Because
Mm,
there was a. I thought talking about, you know, correlation causation. There was studies done some years ago that I looked at, which looked at the fact that students who studied maths A level earned more than students that didn't. And is that because that students that studied at maths A level have some other qualities, or is it the maths A level that's causal? You know,
Yeah, but it's
really,
also but then you've got the system that says, oh, you've got a maths A
yeah,
level, so you can
exactly.
get into these
But
jobs.
now everybody does maths A level, so
Yeah,
maybe the
no one does
currency.
English, no one
Yeah,
does drama, no one
no,
does all this. It's all maths and psychology, isn't it? Or
math. Well, and all the sciences are very biology is super popular.
actually, psychology and biology are slightly further behind than they used to be, I
Yeah,
think.
but
So
yeah, chemistry and physics are right up there, aren't they? Sort of in
yeah,
top levels of popularity,
yeah,
and the arts and social sciences are, like the humanities, rather, I should
the
say.
humanities. There you go.
And isn't there something telling about calling them humanities? If we're thinking about eudaimonia, the what is it that makes us purposeful and makes us experience pleasure if it isn't the arts, if it isn't the humanities?
There you go. And on that note,
On that sad, sorry note, thank you once again for wasting more of your time with me, David Didow.
and me, Martin Robinson, like and subscribe. Thanks for sticking with us to the bitter end, and see you next
Well,
time.
it was bitter, wasn't
Take care. Bye bye.
it? Bye.